Hospitals are supposed to be where you get better, not where you sprint out wearing nothing but a hospital gown and a bad decision. 1. The Great Foo Pole. Getaway one man in Florida decided his stay at the hospital was taking too long, so, in a stroke of genius, he unhooked nothing. He just grabbed his IV pole, still attached to his arm, and walked right out the automatic doors like he was checking out of a hotel. Security found him a block away trying to order a burger, dragging his IV stand like a stubborn dog on a leash. When asked why, he said, "I felt fine." Yeah, except for the part where he was still literally connected to the building by medical tubing. Somewhere out there, a nurse is still wondering why Room 214's IV fluid supply mysteriously vanished down Main Street. 2. The Laundry Truck Liberation. A patient in New Jersey figured the best way to escape unnoticed was to blend in with the laundry. He crawled into a massive bin of used hospital sheets, waited for the staff to wheel it out, and triumphantly rolled through the loading dock unnoticed. Unfortunately, he didn't think about where laundry goes next. The escape ended when workers at the hospital's off-site cleaning facility found him still wrapped in linens, looking like a confused ghost who'd taken a wrong turn at the afterlife. The hospital described it as a security breach. Everyone else called it the most hygienic jailbreak in history. 3. The Wheelchair Grand Prix. A patient in Ohio pulled off an escape that could only be described as Fast and the Furious Medicare drift. After being told he couldn't have cigarettes, he waited until shift change, commandeered a motorized wheelchair, and tore down the hospital hallway at what witnesses described as moderate jogging speed. He made it all the way to the parking lot, where he attempted a high-speed getaway, right into a curb. Paramedics from his own hospital were the first responders. It was the first time in medical history someone was readmitted before the paperwork for their discharge was even printed. 4. The Great Helicopter Hallucination. In Arizona, a patient recovering from anesthesia became convinced he was a pilot, specifically his own medical evacuation pilot. Still groggy, wearing nothing but socks and ambition, he slipped out of bed and wandered toward the hospital's helipad. His plan? Borrow the air ambulance to fly home. Never mind that he didn't have keys, training, or, clothes. He made it all the way to the helicopter before tripping an alarm and being tackled by security mid-takeoff. When asked later why he did it, he said, "I thought I was in Top Gun." The hospital responded by adding more security cameras and, presumably, a no imaginary flight school policy. Somewhere, a nurse is still retelling the story of the man who tried to hijack a helicopter using only confidence and a half-empty IV bag. 5. The Window of Freedom Incident. At a hospital in London, one elderly man decided he'd had enough of bland food and blood pressure checks. So he tied together bed sheets, yes, the classic movie escape plan, and tried to rappel out of his third-floor window. Unfortunately, he underestimated both physics and linen quality. 2 sheets in, the knot slipped, and the man landed in a bush right below his own window. The fall didn't seriously injure him, but it did give him a one-way ticket to the Special Supervision Wing. When doctors asked why he did it, he replied, "They told me I couldn't go outside, so technically I didn't. I went down." Somewhere, a janitor is still finding pieces of hospital-issued bedsheet in that bush. 6. The IV line Uber ride. A patient in Los Angeles decided waiting for discharge papers was an insult to his busy schedule. So, with his hospital bracelet still on and IV still taped to his arm, he ordered an Uber from his hospital bed. The driver, bless him, didn't question why his passenger looked like he'd just crawled out of a science experiment. Mid-ride, the hospital started calling the driver's phone, begging him to turn around. The patient refused, claiming, "If they wanted me to stay, they should have healed me faster." By the time they reached his apartment, his IV bag was hanging from the car's coat hook, swinging gently like the saddest air freshener ever. That Uber driver now tells the story at every family dinner as, "The time I drove a mobile hospital." 7. The MRI maze escape. In Texas, a man recovering from surgery decided he could find the exit himself. The problem? Hospitals are labyrinths designed by people who clearly hate direction signs. He wandered through radiology, mistook an MRI machine for an elevator, and tried pressing buttons that didn't exist. When it didn't open, he climbed into it. The machine immediately activated its magnetic field, pulling every metal object within reach toward him, including his own hospital bed, which slammed into the machine like a jousting opponent. Security found him inside, shouting, "This is the worst elevator I've ever seen." He was fine, though his pride suffered permanent damage. To this day, that hospital has a sign over the MRI room door that reads, "Not an exit, not even close." 8. The cafeteria caper. In Michigan, one patient decided hospital food was an affront to his dignity and his digestive system. So, at 2 a.m., armed with a stolen pair of crutches and a mission, he slipped out of his ward and limped straight into the cafeteria's back door. There, he began cooking himself a proper breakfast, complete with eggs, bacon, and 3 slices of toast. Security cameras later showed him wearing his hospital gown backwards like a chef's apron, confidently flipping pancakes on an industrial griddle. He was caught only when a nurse recognized her missing patient on the kitchen's CCTV, garnishing his plate with parsley. When confronted, he said, "You want me healthy, right? I'm getting protein." They escorted him back to his room, along with his breakfast, which, to be fair, looked better than anything on the hospital menu. 9. The ambulance round trip. A patient in Pennsylvania managed to escape in style by stealing an ambulance. After being told he wasn't cleared for discharge, he waited until paramedics brought in a new patient, then slipped behind the wheel of their still-running rig. He drove 3 blocks before realizing ambulances are basically giant flashing neon signs screaming, "I'm the fugitive." He tried to blend into traffic, sirens still blaring, lights flashing like a rolling disco. Police caught up quickly. When they asked why, he said, "I figured I'd get home faster in the express lane." The irony? They brought him right back to the same hospital, in the very ambulance he'd stolen. The staff now calls that vehicle the boomerang. 10. The ventilation vanisher. In Australia, a patient decided to recreate every prison movie ever made by escaping through the ceiling vents. He climbed onto a chair, removed a panel, and wriggled into the ventilation system like a determined raccoon. Unfortunately, hospital ceilings aren't made for acrobatics or full-grown adults. He got about 15 feet before the tiles gave way, dropping him directly into the nurse's station. Covered in insulation, he looked like a confused snowman caught mid-heist. Nurses applauded sarcastically as he landed, still holding a piece of ductwork like a trophy. When asked what his plan was, he replied, "Up there had to lead somewhere." It did, straight back to his room. Maintenance now keeps extra ceiling panels on standby for what they call ventilation enthusiasts. 11. The Great Wheelchair Race Escape. 2 patients in a rehab facility decided recovery was boring, so they invented a new sport: nighttime wheelchair racing. At first, it was innocent fun, a few laps around the corridor, some friendly competition. But one night, fueled by energy drinks and overconfidence, they took the race outdoors. Security cameras caught them zooming down the hospital driveway at 3 a.m., gowns flapping dramatically like capes. They made it to a nearby gas station, where they celebrated with candy bars and victory selfies. Unfortunately, they forgot one thing. Both had GPS tracking bracelets for medical monitoring. Within minutes, police and hospital staff arrived, forming what witnesses described as the world's slowest car chase. When brought back, one proudly declared, "We didn't escape, we won." The nurses gave them medals made of tape that read, "Fastest way to lose visiting privileges." 12. The ice cream heist. At a hospital in Oregon, one patient decided that life without dessert wasn't worth living. After being put on a strict no-sugar diet, he concocted a quistia, plan that would have impressed a jewel thief. Late one night, he unplugged his heart monitor to silence the alarms, tiptoed past the nurse's station, and snuck into the hospital's kitchen. There, he found a freezer full of ice cream cups intended for pediatric patients. He ate 8 of them, vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry, before getting caught mid-spoonful by a janitor. When asked what he was doing, he said, "Stealing happiness." The nurses didn't even get mad. They just laughed and wheeled him back, sticky-handed and victorious. From then on, the kitchen staff jokingly labeled the freezer the vault. It's said that every time someone opens it, alarms don't go off, but trust issues do. 13. The fire alarm fiasco. In a hospital in Illinois, one man realized that while doors could be locked, panic was still an option. Desperate to leave before discharge, he decided to create a distraction. His master plan? Pull the fire alarm. Instantly, chaos erupted. Nurses evacuating patients, sprinklers blasting water, and an automated voice calmly repeating, "This is not a drill." Amid the mayhem, he tried to slip out wearing a wet gown and slippers. Unfortunately, the only exit he chose was through the emergency wing, where firefighters were literally walking in. Soaked, shivering, and surrounded by heroes who instantly recognized he wasn't on the schedule, he surrendered with the immortal words, "I just needed some fresh air." The hospital billed him for the cleanup, the wasted sprinkler system, and, ironically, a new room. With no windows and a view of the fire exit, he never made it through. 14. The Taxi Bandage Bandit. In New York City, a patient recovering from surgery decided the hospital was cutting into his nightlife. So he wrapped his head in extra bandages, claimed to be going for a smoke break, and walked right past security like a man auditioning for The Mummy Returns. Once outside, he hailed a yellow cab and told the driver to take him to Times Square. But halfway there, the driver noticed the guy's hospital bracelet and blood-stained socks, and turned right back around. When they arrived, nurses were waiting curbside, arms crossed. The patient tried to pay the cab fare with his hospital ID bracelet, declaring, "I'm good for it." He wasn't. They wheeled him back in like a celebrity returning to rehab for the third time. From that day on, every nurse in that hospital had a new rule. If a patient says they're just stepping out, check if they're already wrapped for the sequel. 15. The Stairwell Standoff. In a hospital in Minnesota, one man decided that if he couldn't leave through the main door, he'd find a more creative exit. He snuck into a stairwell between floors, thinking it led outside. It didn't. It led to a dead-end maintenance landing with no windows and a locked fire door. Trapped, he sat down and started yelling for help. But the stairwell's echo turned his voice into what sounded like a ghostly scream. The night staff, hearing it over the intercom, called security and a priest. When they finally found him 2 hours later, he was sitting calmly, eating pudding from his hospital tray. His only comment, "Well, at least it's quieter than my roommate." The incident earned that stairwell a new nickname among staff, the hallway to nowhere, and a freshly posted sign that reads, "Exit does not lead to freedom, just regret." 16. The Morphine Marathon. In Nevada, a patient on post-surgery painkillers suddenly got what he called an unstoppable urge to jog. Believing himself to be in peak condition, he unplugged his IV, tied his gown like a cape, and sprinted out of the recovery ward. Nurses watched in disbelief as he jogged barefoot down the hallway, past the cafeteria, and into the parking lot. Security caught up after half a mile, finding him stretching beside a vending machine, breathing heavily but proud. "I just needed to test my stamina," he told them. The only problem? He was still connected to his IV tubing, dragging the stand behind him like a loyal metal dog. They wheeled him back in, crowd cheering like he'd just finished a marathon for medical miracles. The nurses even made a finish line out of gauze tape. 17. The Visitor Van Escape. In Kentucky, a patient recovering from a mild concussion decided he'd rather recover at home. Immediately, he spotted a hospital transport van idling near the loading dock, engine running, driver inside filling out paperwork. With the stealth of a cartoon burglar, he climbed in through the passenger door, shouted, "Floor it!" and tried to slam the gear shift into drive. The driver calmly stared at him and said, "Sir, you're still wearing a catheter bag." The man froze, then tried to play it off by pretending to inspect the vehicle. Security arrived moments later, confused by the world's slowest getaway attempt. When questioned, the patient admitted, "I just missed my dog." The hospital now requires van drivers to remove their keys, and occasionally their patients, before paperwork. 18. The Radiology Runaway. In a California hospital, a patient scheduled for an MRI decided he didn't trust giant magnets and made a break for it mid-scan. Wearing only socks and an expression of deep betrayal, he bolted from radiology, past the gift shop, and out the emergency exit. Alarms blared, but he kept running, clutching his hospital gown like a cape. Unfortunately, he forgot one important detail. He was still wearing a tracking bracelet that triggered every automatic door and alarm in the building. The staff followed his trail like he was the world's least stealthy spy. He made it only 2 blocks before being found hiding behind a vending machine. When asked why he ran, he said, "You ever seen what magnets do to metal fillings?" The nurse replied, "Yes, nothing." 19. The Phantom Nurse. Getaway. In Florida, one patient devised a plan straight out of a low-budget sitcom. She disguised herself as a nurse using items scavenged from her own room: blue gloves, a paper mask, and a stolen stethoscope. Then she confidently pushed her own wheelchair down the hall, nodding at real nurses as she passed. It actually worked, until someone asked her to help lift a patient. She froze, muttered, I'm off duty," and tried to wheel herself away faster. Security caught her by the elevators, still pretending to chart something on a clipboard she'd drawn with a crayon. When asked why she did it, she said, "I just wanted to see how far confidence could take me." The staff admitted, pretty far. 20. The pillowcase parachute. In Colorado, one man recovering from a broken leg decided he'd healed enough to skip rehab. His plan for leaving was airborne. He tied pillowcases together, attached them to a laundry cart, and announced to a roommate that he was building a parachute. The nurses thought he was joking, until he wheeled the contraption to a second-story window and tried to launch himself softly into freedom. Spoiler, it was not soft. He landed in a mulch bed outside the children's wing, miraculously uninjured but completely wrapped in sheets like a disappointed burrito. When staff asked what he was thinking, he replied, "I saw it work in a cartoon once." The hospital later placed child safety locks on all second-floor windows, not for kids but for bored adults who watch too much Looney Tunes. 21. The hallway hitchhiker. In Ohio, a patient recovering from a mild stroke decided to hitch a ride home without waiting for his release. He sat in the hospital hallway holding a handwritten sign that said, "Toledo, need lift, will tip." Several visitors assumed it was performance art. After 2 hours, a confused Uber Eats driver actually stopped to ask if he was serious. He climbed into the car, IV still attached, and demanded the driver just go. Unfortunately, the driver noticed the IV bag swinging in the rearview mirror and turned around. The man protested, "You're ruining my first freedom ride." He was escorted back by 2 laughing nurses who said they'd never seen someone try to hitchhike from the cardiology unit before. The sign now hangs in the staff lounge as a reminder. Discharge paperwork first, road trip later. 22. The cafeteria cart conspiracy. In Wisconsin, a patient decided the food deliveries were his ticket to freedom. Every morning, a cafeteria worker rolled trays to each floor, and one day, the patient saw his chance. He climbed onto the bottom shelf of the cart and covered himself with napkins and dinner rolls, hoping to sneak out with the dishes. For 20 glorious minutes, it worked. He made it through 2 hallways and an elevator before a nurse noticed that the cart was breathing. When they pulled the cloth away, the man shouted, "I was just helping." His disguise consisted of mashed potatoes and misplaced confidence. The hospital cafeteria later renamed his favorite dessert the escape eclair in his honor. To this day, staff swear you can still hear the faint squeak of wheels every time someone tries to skip their meal plan. 23. The fence-climbing freedom fighter. In Texas, a man recovering from minor surgery decided that hospital rules were too controlling. So, one afternoon, he snuck out through the staff parking lot and began climbing the perimeter fence, wearing nothing but his gown, his IV bag, and pure defiance. Unfortunately, hospital gowns are not designed for athletics. Halfway up, the gown tore dramatically, leaving him clinging to the fence like a confused lizard. Security arrived, trying very hard not to laugh as they helped him down with a blanket and a strong reminder about trespassing. He told them, "You can cage the body but not the spirit." They replied, "Sir, you're literally stuck to the cage." He was returned to his bed, and the fence got a new sign. Warning, this barrier has already defeated one escape attempt. Turns out, escaping hospitals isn't about strength. It's about creativity and terrible judgment. Which one deserves a medal?